Addicts.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. What's caught your attention in the automotive world?
Winter has caught our attention in the automotive world. It turned into a deep freeze in every state, pretty much except for Florida. If you were in Florida, the whole world just hated you, at least all of us in the United States, because you had weather in the records up in the high 80s, I think 90 at some point down there, when the rest of us were as low as 50 below in some parts of the country. But most of us, like here in our area of the country, we were down to, driving to work, it said 35 below zero.
Actual temperature,
yeah.
not a wind chill.
No wind, and Shannon's thermometer at his house, I think, was 31, 32 below zero, and that went on for several days. And then it kept moving south, because I have friends of mine that live in Houston where they said, my pond is frozen and it's snowing. So when Shannon says, oh, yeah, our southern listeners probably won't get this, but up here, yeah, they get it now. It's cold, but all week long it has been a barrage of, my heater doesn't work. You think? Why don't you call me in 3 days when it gets to zero out and not minus 30? And if it's still not working, we'll schedule an appointment. But a lot of people don't know certain cars just do not produce very much heat at all when it gets that cold, because it's just physically impossible. You don't have enough, candle power there there's no BTUs to warm it up. Amazingly, my Camaro, which usually shouldn't even be driven in the winter, but the ground was dry. That thing heats up with an all aluminum block and a lot of horsepower. It is heated, and I have to turn down the heater after about 5 minutes or so of driving.
Makes it real easy to wear a mask when it's 25 below.
Not hard to convince people at all to put a mask on, and they'll keep it on throughout the day.
Yeah.
It warms your face up, doesn't it?
My daughter's car wouldn't start, and she didn't know what to do. I mean, she just couldn't imagine that the cold would do that. And when she tried to start it, it was kind of funny. I went out there and she tried to start it, and the car just went, Second time it went, Third time it just went, not gonna.
Maybe.
I had a number of people too, Russ, that called me, and I'm like, I'm sorry, you just got to wait until it's not 32 below zero. Things don't work right in this temperature.
Well, I let my car run 30 minutes and it was still cold. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what got us, the most amazing thing about this whole thing, at our shop, we're busy with a lot of stuff right now, but not one single call from someone who said, my car won't start. Can you help me? Not one single call for a battery. We had one email for a battery from one of our own employees, wanted to know if we had one in stock at the time for his Cadillac. Other than that, that floored me, because we are usually buried with those kind of calls, or people coming in saying, I need a battery, my car's dead. But maybe they just knew that, my car is either worked or whatever. But I did talk to our battery vendor yesterday, because he came in and said, sorry, I'm late. I'm sure you're out of batteries. And I said, no, we've sold one battery in the last 3 weeks, which is just really weird. But he had been into one of the battery stores down the street in Sioux Falls, and he said they had sold 79 batteries to him, carried 79 batteries in and like 84 cores out, which is a lot for this poor guy to carry back and forth of these AC Delco batteries. He's our local route driver, and I was like, oh man, you had a day. He goes, yeah, they pretty much cleaned me out on that one. But that's what that place does. They're known for, this one place is known for selling their batteries. But I couldn't believe we didn't get these calls.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Steve. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Steve, what can we do for you?
I've got a quick question to refresh my memory. I've got an uncle that has a 2003 Buick LeSabre, no charge condition. Before I condemn the alternator, if I remember right on those GM alternators, It's got the two little wires up on top. You plug into the alternator, and with the key off, you put a voltmeter, ground it, and probe them wires. There should be no voltage. You turn the key on, you should have power to one of them. And if you start the car, should you have power to both of them?
What year is this?
You know,
What year is the car?
2003.
An 03.
Yeah.
Okay. When we went into computer-controlled alternators, one of them turns into a pulse width modulated signal, and the other one is a continuation of the fields. You've got the big field wire on the back of it, and then you've got one that's power, and then you've got the pulse width modulated one. You're right on the split though, so if you're still using the old style, you have got
it just has the one connector with the two wires coming out of it.
Yeah, but if it's still, and that's the way they split into the new ones that were computer controlled. So if it's still the old design, you'll have to look up your manual, service manual, to find out for a fact on that, because it'll split right in the 03. But the big one in the back is your hot's going to be your field wire, hot all the time, and then you're going to have another wire coming into that alternator that is hot all the time. And then when you turn the ignition on, the second wire out of those two small runs through your gauge, and then grounds at the alternator when the alternator is not on to turn the light on inside. But when it's fired up, it sends 12 volts back the other way, so it's a positive. So it'll be ground one way, and it'll be a positive the other way. So if you were to hook a test light from the positive of the battery up to that, it'd be lit when the car was off with the key on. But once you start it, the light would go out. Or if you hooked it from the negative of the battery to that, it would be lit when it started, but nothing when it was off. So it'd go either way. But you got to look in that manual to find out which design alternator. Because if you got a pulse width alternator in that, where the computer's running the whole thing, it's a whole different story. And you need just a pulse width meter. They're $10, $15 that you don't need something super fancy to do it.
Does that help you out there, Steve?
Well, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't want to replace the alternator. It used to be back when, if you had a fuse out, one of those wires was dead and it wouldn't charge.
Right, and it doesn't always work that way in the new ones because most of them are computer controlled. That's why the service manual is going to be the go-to of choice on that one.
Like in the GM trucks and everything, in that year range, around 03, they were starting to change a lot of their systems. So you just got to check. If we knew off the top of our head for sure, we'd give you that exact answer. But we want you to check, because if we're wrong, we'd hate to tell you the wrong information.
866-594-4150. That's the number to call. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
The hood. But they know that not everyone can make their own repair.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. The phone number to reach us, 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Chris. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Chris, what can we do for you?
Hi, I've got a 2018 Nissan Frontier Pro 4X. And the other day, I was driving into Canton, and as I was coasting into town, my truck started to buck up and down like that quarter ride you used to find outside of the Kmart. Yeah, and so, I mean, just this real violent up and down, the front and the back, dropping back and forth. And when I got down to about 35, then it was out again. And I don't know what I need to be looking at to try to figure out how to fix this thing.
We first have to identify what's going on in the background.
Maybe it's
there.
all the monkeys you got there bouncing up and down in the back. What's the noise in the background there? Are you in a shop?
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay, so at first I thought it was dogs.
Then I thought it might be tires squealing.
And I'm thinking this might be a connected clue to why his truck is bucking up and down. And then he gave the reference to the horse outside of a store.
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking he's got animals in here.
I think so.
I heard the tires squeal, and I thought the next thing was going to be a and then, never mind, guys. Looks like my truck is done. Did your steering wheel shake when it started jumping up and down like that?
No, it didn't.
Ooh, well, there goes that thought. I was thinking maybe it had the death wobble in the front and it was shaking like crazy, because that can happen too. You can even get that in the back. You get a wheel that starts violently hopping with a bad strut or something, spring shock.
Did it seem like it was the engine, transmission, transfer case, drivetrain combination that was making it just surge, or did it feel like it was a suspension thing? That's what I got to get my head around.
It felt like a suspension thing, because the front bumper would drop, and then that would come up, and the back bumper would drop, and it just rocked back and forth like that for a little while as I was driving.
And how many miles are on this Pro 4X?
48,000.
Okay, so pretty young vehicle yet. It hasn't had a lot of life experiences if it had, say, 200,000 miles on it. And the only thing that's really unique about those trucks, if they were so equipped, was an electric locking differential was available. I know we just dismantled the 2019 like a couple weeks ago here in our dismantling shop. There's nothing else overly unique about the suspension. It's an independent front suspension. It has pretty standard shock absorbers. They're a little different rated because they've got a bit of an off-road package to them, so you get a little different feel and recovery to them. The spring rates are maybe slightly different, but there's nothing about that truck that should make it jump up and down like that. Unless, perchance, for some reason, it was cycling four-wheel drive or something when it shouldn't have been. And that still shouldn't make it buck up and down. It would make it feel really mechanically wrong.
Like if you had tires that were worn out on one end and not the other, it could give you a little bind up, but not that big a shake.
Yeah, some drivetrain wrap up could occur.
I want to drive that thing and see what's going on. Go for a ride. I'll put my seatbelt on really tight.
Do you have to give him a quarter first?
Yeah, maybe that's it. You don't have any change in the ashtray, do you? I mean, that might do it.
Is it still doing it now today?
It's not as bad. I mean, driving around Sioux Falls every once in a while, I'll get a little bit of a rough ride, but nothing like I got on Saturday.
Well, the obvious stuff that I'm sure you've thought of, but a lot of people can lose track of how bad it can get. If you happen to be sitting somewhere where you got chunks of ice, snow that melted to one side of the rim and then refroze, and you end up with that ice inside the wheels, boy, I've seen that really throw some people for a loop, how it can react to the vehicle. But I'm guessing you know that already. That's the only thing.
And they keep it in the garage.
Yeah, so it's de-thawed. Yeah, a heated garage?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't...
not a heated garage, but a garage. But I'd also driven to Sioux Center, and I was on my way back from there. So, I mean, it'd been running all day.
There's only so much to look at for something like that. Make sure the four-wheel drive's engaging properly. Make sure you don't have any broken sway bar links, but that's not going to make... When going straight down the road, that doesn't affect that. That's more when you're turning and going different directions, changing the roll of the body. I don't know. I would be checking just physically looking underneath to make sure there's not a monkey stuck underneath there or something. I'm a little concerned about that.
Do you have fewer dogs than you used to? Because we heard them at the beginning of the call.
Does the neighbor have fewer dogs than they used to?
Terrible.
Oh, that was
866-594-4150. Chris, good luck. That's just something that you have to get on and drive. And
I'm guessing if Russ put a quarter in that and got up on the horse, he would tell you in about 30 seconds, maybe 15, what it is. But until you experience exactly what he's saying, it's hard to say.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Roger. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Roger, what can we do for you?
Yes, I just purchased a 09 Ford motorhome. I haven't taken delivery on it. It's been stored in a climate-controlled environment since day one. Has 1,900 miles on it, and I was just wondering if there are any concerns that I should be aware of as far as mechanically and since it's been in storage so long, it's been driven occasionally, of course. But just was wondering what your thoughts might be on that.
Wow, that's like a collector's item. 1,900 miles. That's impressive. So is this a big, like a Class A built from a special chassis motorhome, or is it one that's built from a van chassis?
It's a Winnebago Vista. It's a smaller version of it's on a 30-foot.
Okay, so
Climate controlled is really going to help. That's going to be a huge thing with any vehicle. If you keep it in a proper storage unit, not too hot, not too cold, just right, things will work much better. Seals will stay in better condition. Hopefully you're keeping the rodents out of it and things like that. When you've got a room, they like to migrate towards things that are a little warmer than the rest of the room when that happens. So I think overall, that's the best thing that could have happened, is storing it in there. But like with any car, if you were calling us about a car that had been stored that long, it depends on how long it was driven. If it was taken out every year to go camping and it was run an hour to get where it was going and then parked and driven back and sat in this garage, so therefore you don't have a lot of miles on it, then it may be in much better shape than if it got 1,900 miles on it in one trip and then was parked and it sat in that garage since 2010. That would be really hard on it. So
right.
For us, and it's running and driving now, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if it's running and driving, I would check all the fluids on it when it's a little warmer where you can do so. Just make sure everything looks good. Look at the brakes, look for any leaks, look for any rust on brake lines and things like that, which you're probably not going to find with that low of miles being stored inside and probably driven just in nice weather outside without the snow and ice. And it'll probably be just fine. I think you may have found the dream that a lot of people would love to find.
The things that you're going to want to look at, you've got tires that are 10 years old.
That's my other question, right?
Keep that in mind, but I'm going to go back to it. You say climate-controlled storage. Was it also air-conditioned, too, as far as you know?
That I can't answer. I assume if it was climate-controlled, it probably was.
Because if you can have, I've got vehicles that have sat for 10 years in
the sunlight.
The sun. If you got them inside in climate-controlled storage, I don't have a lot of problems with them, but I also don't take them out and drive 1,000 miles across the country either. But I don't have any problem jumping in one of them and going to Sioux Falls. I would take it out of storage, inspect the fluids, look at the air in the tires, and I would drive to our town of Sioux Falls, which is 25 miles away, no problem.
Tires on my Model T were put on when I was very young in 1975. It's been inside without sunlight, except for when it's been driven, and maybe 500 miles since then. They don't have a single crack in them.
And I have tires on my snowmobile trailer that set us outside all the time, and I've had to replace them after 5 years because the sun just chewed them up, and the weather cracks were growing so big I didn't trust them to pull to Sherman.
Yeah, sun is very it's hard on tires, that's for sure.
And your fuel levels, if the tank is not full, and let's say it's got a quarter tank in it or a half tank, and it's running now, I would just introduce new fuel. I would put in some new fuel, just probably a straight unleaded fuel to start with, and burn that tank through. And I think you're going to be okay. Being it was inside, but those tires are something I would pay attention to with that many years on them. But my experiences from what we see here at our auto recycling facility and everything, if the vehicles have been inside, out of the sunlight, the tires typically fare pretty well.
Well, that's good news. I'm glad to hear you say that. I'll certainly be aware of it and keep an eye on them.
Roger, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. And that is, 2,000 miles on a 10-year-old Winnebago is not out of the question. That's not, it's low, but that does happen with.
I have to believe that somebody bought it, had plans for using it, and their life changed.
Yeah, good point. In one way or another,
for some reason their life changed and it just didn't get used. Or they went out the first time and one party or the other in the relationship said, this is a really good idea until we actually did it. I don't know that this is for me.
We'll just get hotels from now on.
Let's just, we just spent X number of I'm not going with you next time you leave. That's what this comes down to.
They've paid considerably to have it in climate-controlled storage.
Yeah, unless
Whether
they
it's
have
at
their own, whoever
house,
had it.
But still, that's a lot of storage space.
It is.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturtevant's.
Get under the hood. Call the Motor Medics, 866-594-4150.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. We're glad to have you with us. Russ and Shannon are here to answer your questions. I'm Chris Carter, here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. And don't forget, if you join us on Facebook and join the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Michelle Earl from Paso Robles, California. I like saying that. It's just smooth. Paso Robles.
I'm glad you said it.
Isn't that where your aunt's at?
In that area, but I'm glad you said it because I would have butchered it.
I was just thinking that's one of our newer stations, like within the last few months, and hey, now she can listen to us right on the radio out
That's
there.
awesome. We can catch us on the radio. You can catch us on the podcast. You can watch us on the YouTube feed.
You can come over. I mean,
You can come out to Nordstrom's to our auto recycling facility and see us on in the lobby during the show.
If you wanted to work for us someday, you could go to UTI, Universal Technical Institute, because we want people that know what they're doing. We want you trained. We want you versed in the latest of knowledge coming out of the big automakers. They're not the big three anymore. They're like the big 20. I mean, there seems like there's so many of them that do very well across the markets.
Oh, that's a good question.
But there's so much stuff. You got to be trained, and you want a place that's basically right there in the shop with you, and they're working so close at UTI with the manufacturers, and they do more than just, I know a lot of people aren't thinking boats right now, but go to a warmer climate. Maybe you want to go to their Orlando campus because they've got them all across the country. Maybe you want to be a marine mechanic or an auto body tech, or NASCAR tech. I think NASCAR's making a comeback. They're changing things up. They even got a sitcom now about NASCAR. So I'm thinking that could be the way to go. So Universal Technical Institute, UTI.edu.
And time flies.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can go get that degree and be
working before you know it. It'll be
so fast.
Yeah, I just went there.
You mentioned marine.
Mm-hmm.
Just makes me think of something. My older daughter, or she might stop in today at
joining the Marines.
Shores. No, she always wanted to be. One of the things on her list was a marine biologist, but she only wanted to work on the surface.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
She didn't want to go deep where there was scary stuff. Mm-hmm. She just wanted to be like a surface marine biologist. Yep. Can you do that?
I'm sure. You could be a theoretical marine biologist, probably. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Stacy. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Stacy, what can we do for you?
Yes, I've got a 2011 F-250 that it's a diesel, and so I got to start it, of course, in the morning and let it warm up. And when as far as I can tell, it's like 10 below and colder. When I come back, it'll be locked, and it's done it about 5 times in the last 10 days or whatever. And so after the first time, I was already watching it because I was sure I hadn't hit the button and accidentally locked myself out. But it's like, again, this morning, I had to crack the window down, and it was about 10 below, and I come back, and it's locked again. And not quite sure what could be causing it. When it's a little warmer, it doesn't seem to do that at all. So.
Seen that on a couple different things, do that on multiple vehicles, and a lot of times it comes from the condensation when it gets that cold, and then it warms up inside, and the snow on your feet starts melting, and the humidity starts to rise and get into the bottom of the dash and into the doors, and humidity is going to condensate on the coldest components. the door switches, the body control modules, they stay very cold for a very long time until the vehicle is thoroughly warm. And you're driving your car and you're like, yeah, my seat warmer's on, everything feels pretty warm, but you grab the shifter and you go, ooh, that's really cold when everything else is pretty warm. Sometimes it's even wet. You know, in my Camaro the other day, the shifter was wet on the chrome part on the stock. I think, why is this wet? Well, it was just the moisture of the humidity that was in there, and it took a while to come off. So if you get a little moisture in the switch or in the body control module when it's this cold, it could be activating that circuit and causing it to lock. The only way you could diagnose it would be to have a scanner on it, watching it from the seat and look at the input. And after you sat there for a while and it decided to lock itself, you could look and see if the input said lock. And if it did, you'd know it was something coming on the input side. It could still be the body control module, but it'd be on the input side. If you saw it just locking on the out with nothing coming in on the control, you know it's definitely the module and not the.
But
switch.
you'd have to see it happen.
Yeah, you'd have to see it, and so many things happen when it's this bitterly cold that are just abnormal. They just don't normally happen. You can get to 5 below or so, you're okay. But once you hit 10 below and further, it just exponentially goes. I don't know what we would see if we had like 3 days worth of true 40-degree below zero weather where it never reached like more than 20 below. I think we'd see cars just do crazy stuff. We have some that just won't move. You start them up, put them in gear, and they won't go anywhere until they warm up for a half hour. They're just sit there. We have some with door locks that do stuff. I had one the other day. They said they pulled their car into their garage, which was heated, and their car had been outside really, really cold. They said, well, I want to warm it up for Monday. So they brought it in like Saturday night and had been sitting outside all day frozen. They pulled it into the garage, closed the door, and went inside. The snow melted off the truck. The interior of the vehicle had a window cracked down, and it was freezing cold in there. And all the humidity in the garage started condensating in the vehicle. And now they have no radio, no instrument panel. The car starts, and that's all it does. The stuff's doing all sorts of wacky stuff. And they said, well, yeah, a lot of stuff was wet inside, condensation. So it does some weird stuff. I'm thinking on yours, it's a lot of them have been door locks. If you can just, when it's cold like that and you came back and it's locked, unlock the door with the key, get in it, close the door, and then just barely tap the lock and unlock switch. Just touch it real lightly. And if it locks without putting
a full depression of the switch,
then it's the switch is back.
Okay.
But if it doesn't do that, maybe give a little tap on the bottom of the dash, just below the center, the steering wheel, down low. See if it locks then, because there's a body control module down there.
And maybe wiggle the shifter just slightly and see if maybe perchance it's, for whatever reason, thinking it's going into drive.
Yep.
And it's still in park.
Watch your indicator.
Yep.
If it's jumping around from park to neutral, reverse.
Then it's going to turn on that feature that would automatically lock the doors. So just different stuff
sure.
like that.
Yeah, I gotcha. Does that help you out there, Stacy?
Yeah.
Thanks very much for the call. I would just, my answer would be get an extra key. I mean, seriously, and just
wait for it to warm up and see if it continues.
And hopefully it's not going to happen regularly, because we don't often get, we do get cold, but the cold snap we've had recently here in the northern states, well, across the nation, is colder than normal.
So our problems are our power door locks accidentally going off. Our friends in the south right now are having horrible problems now because they're not prepared for this. They're having broken water lines. They're having
like I said,
lots of issues that just are going to be horrible for them. And I'm not going to sit there, toughen up. I mean, because that's not what, they don't engineer for that. They don't build for that. They're not, the water lines aren't buried 8 feet deep like ours are. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but I mean,
not much.
No, but I mean, it's just crazy. They don't do what we do. They don't do what we do.
Yeah. There's a lot of change down there. I mean, even here, it's been so cold that I had 2 cars that did not start. The one day was fine. 2 days, not good. 2 days, mine was cold enough that it wouldn't turn over and start. And then my wife's sat from Saturday to Monday, it wouldn't start.
And then, like my daughter's too, as soon as it got yesterday, it got up to 4 or 5, started right up. It was just fine. So, yeah, it does weird stuff. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Ohio and talk to Paul. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Paul, what can we do for you?
Yeah, great show. Big fan.
Thanks.
I got a 2016 Chrysler 300. When I try to remote start it on my Uconnect app on my phone, if it gets below 25 degrees or so, it won't remote start from the phone. But if I use the fob, it'll remote start it just fine. But if it fails off the remote on the phone and I try to remote start it from the fob, it even says on the dash, remote start failed, restart car to reset or something like that. And it's been going on since I've owned the car. And I'm just wondering what's going on.
I think that was a software update they had through the Uconnect. I've seen that before on a truck. It will say remote start disabled on the dash, doesn't it? And then you restart, it. Yeah, and then once you restart it, it's fine. But you know that it's something going on there because you can use the fob every time. But when you try that remote on your phone, it doesn't work. And it's so if there's any codes at all in the system of any kind, it's not going to start. It's designed that way.
I just had it in the dealership. It didn't show any codes. And they couldn't get it to do it because it was above 25 degrees. So, like I said, it only happens when it's below 25, and I just remote start it from my phone.
And that's going to be hard to get a day that it may not be below 25 till next year now, or
I hope
maybe
so.
for a couple years. You just don't know when that temperature is going to come.
25 below zero. Are you talking 25 degrees or 25 degrees below zero?
Below zero.
Oh, 25 degrees.
Oh, well,
25 degrees.
Yeah, see, we can get that, Russ.
You got a couple months left to get.
I thought you were talking about below zero. Yeah, you.
No.
Definitely get them in and have them take a look at it. When you know that they say we're going to get down to that temperature, bring it in, let it sit overnight so they can watch it. But explain to them, look, have a tech go out and look in the window, stand by the car while you try to start it. Or you'll start it on the phone. Get on the phone with them, say, I'm starting it now, so they can see it. Because otherwise, they may just try it and go, oh, it works fine for us.
Yeah.
They have to duplicate your problem.
Yeah, they have to duplicate it. And once they duplicate it, they're probably going to say, well, it only did it once. We're not sure what it is. Let's look up bulletins. And they may find a bulletin that says, oh, yeah, this is a reflash of the Uconnect, or you have to replace a piece of hardware. You just never know. I mean, they can do some weird stuff. I got an issue going on right now with my remote start, that if it sits more than 3 days without being used, my key fob won't work anymore to unlock or lock or start it. But if I use my remote start on my phone, I can start the car, shut it back off, and the second I start it, then I can start using my remote again. I don't know what's going on other than there's a disconnect of 500 feet between the two now, and I've never had that in that situation, so I'm not sure. But these things can do all sorts of weird things.
And there are times, if it is cold enough, and this should not be the case with 25 degrees, that if it is not turning the car fast enough and it's afraid it's not going to fire,
right,
the remote's going to error back at you and not let you, it's going to disable that because it thinks there's a problem with the car. No different than if there was a trouble code. It's saying, I'm not getting my normal start signal here. It's not going yet. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this anymore. But that shouldn't be the case at 25 degrees, though.
Paul, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Pennsylvania and talk to Dale. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Dale, what can we do for you?
I have a 2008 Chevy Impala with a 3.5 V6 in it. And a while back, I was having issues putting gas in it. So I had the check engine light was on, so I had the code red. And it was the vent valve for the fuel tank. So I had that replaced. Then my check engine light came on again. Then they checked it, the code, it was like a P0172. Then they also noticed that the alcohol content was high when they did the live scan on it. So they reset it, and it was fine for, about a week. Then the check engine light came back on, and the alcohol content's back up to like 30%. Is there anything that can be done to correct this keep it from coming back on?
Yeah, the way these cars don't have a sensor in the fuel line to sense alcohol content anymore. So what they're doing is the software, the computer is set up to resample the oxygen sensor when it sees a move of a certain percent on your fuel gauge. So one thing you don't want to do is rapidly switch back and forth with a small amount. You don't want to add a couple gallons of non-alcohol fuel and then a couple gallons of alcohol fuel and go back and forth. You want to run it down on flex fuel cars until you get down to a lower amount, like a little over a quarter tank, and then fill it completely up and stop. And if you're having an issue with filling it, a lot of people don't fill them all the way. They go 5, 6, 7 gallons, and that's it. That's one thing that can cause an issue. These cars, a few of them had issues with the mass airflow sensors that were also causing some reading issues on these. And some of them had software flash issues. We have flashed a lot of computers to the latest software design to try to correct that problem. Because even if the car has 0 alcohol content in the fuel, no biofuel at all in this thing, it can give you a reading of 90%, and it will not start at that point. It's going to get all wacky, so you have to reset it.
Yeah, the first time it was reading like 70 or 75%, and they reset it, and now it's back up to like a 30%.
Yeah, did they tell you anything about reflashing it? Because usually the first step is just to clear it and see what happens, to see if it's just been the way fuel's been added. But then the second step is, hey, we got to dig a little deeper. And do we have to put a computer in it?
I just took it to an independent shop, and he reset it for me. And
sure.
Yeah, I didn't take it to a dealership.
Well, even the independent shop should be able to fix it. But the first step is just to clear it. You know, like we were saying, you can clear it and see if it's fixed. But if it comes back quite soon, the second step is usually a reflash or a component failure that needs to be replaced in there.
Real quick, Russ, is the vent valve unrelated when that went bad?
Mm-hmm. Separate
Most likely
issues.
unrelated. Just make sure you're not overfilling the tank, too. Just for all of our listeners, don't overclick. Just when it stops, stop.
Dale, thanks very much for the call. I was at the gas station the other day, and a guy in a pretty new truck, I would say a year old or less, was filling his tank. He let it full, and then he was trying to get it up to another. And I was going to say something to him, but I saw who it was, and I don't like him. So I just let him. I just let him ruin his truck.
Oh, Chris.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. 866-594-4150. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show.
Car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. 866-594-4150. That's the phone number to reach us. Let's talk to Ken. Ken, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Oh, yes. How's it going, guys? Here in Sioux Falls again, but I have a question for an old Dodge. It's a 1988 Power Ram, full-size, four-wheel drive truck. Now, here's my question. It's 1988, and they started calling it a 5.2. So I was wondering about the motor, if it's fuel injection or what they did to the old 318 to update it to like fuel injection. So that's my question when I buy it, because it's only $2,000, but it could easily turn into like $4,000 if you want to update it. Understand what I'm saying?
The 1988 5.2 liter is the equivalent of the classic 318 motor. If you look at the Chrysler, if you do the math, it's a 318, been around for years. In 1988, they had put a throttle body on it, I believe. It's a throttle body injection where it's going to have a couple of injectors up in a throttle body that somewhat looks like a carburetor. For some that didn't know the transition points, they often will look under the hood and see, and they think it is carbureted, but it is a throttle body, I believe. Is that correct from what you know, Russ, in 1988?
Yeah, I think that's where they were at on that. Chevy was 87 when they went to the throttle body injection on these.
Yeah, and Ford started doing their fuel injection stuff in 85, with the 302s and the 351Ws. So I believe they had the throttle body going by then. And then they switched to the Magnum motors like in 1992, where they went to more of a port injection in the Dodges. So
That
it
should be a fuel inject truck.
It should be a good truck for that. I wouldn't mess with it at all. It's pre OBD2, so some of the diagnostics is harder. It doesn't make it quite as easy for people. But if it's running good and working good, that's about as efficient as you're going to make that without some major modifications, because the next step would be to go to a port injection, which is going to require a different intake manifold. The intake manifold may or may not match up with the heads. I don't know my Chrysler stuff that well. And then you're getting into a whole different control system. On many of those, different fuel pressures. A throttle body runs on how many pounds of pressure usually?
9 to 14. And you're looking 60-ish for a
full port injection. So you got a lot of differences there, but you got yourself a solid big old truck there that probably weighs 6,500 pounds and could help you in the event of a national disaster.
Ken, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Chad. You're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you, Chad?
Yeah, I was having problems with 2004 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland heater problem. The heater works fine, but I got to South Dakota coming from Colorado, and it turned off the car, and the blower motor kept on going. I didn't know if it was maybe the module, or I did the relay for it, but the relay didn't seem to change anything. The thermostat doesn't seem to want thermostat adjusts. It's just high and low don't work. It just stays on high, and it's one of those adjustable heat, side by side, heat adjustments for each side. It's got temperature gauges for that. But
you got all the toys in that Overland edition.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it is in the blower relay and the blower resistor assembly under the dash. If you replace the relay and it didn't do it, try unplugging the resistor completely and seeing if the resistor is just not shorted.
I figured I was going to do next. But I was told you guys had some, good information in here. So
look for melted wires on the connector. If you unplug that resistor connector, and it looks pretty good on the outside, but you shine a flashlight into it, and the terminals are black on the end or different colors, and it's slightly melted. Slightly is not good. It should be perfect, like brand new in there. So buy the pigtail they have for the end that solders on and replace that with the resistor. Otherwise, you're going to have problems with the second one you put in as well.
And you sound like you got some knowledge there. And the majority of the time, if that is the problem, the resistor has failed and heated up because of a blower motor that's drawing too much resistance.
Okay. So then the wires are more likely going to be, melted.
The heat pushes back up the circuit, and that's the next weakest link. So you might also replace a blower motor at the same time if it's not if it's in your budget.
Oh, I was going to say, you mean you might also need to, or he should maybe, if he can, he should.
He should, because typically the reason those go bad, but there are some that they just have weak connections, and they'll start building up some heat just at the connection because it's weak, and then they go downhill from there. But majority of the time, Russ, is that probably right? Blower motor's starting to...
Exactly right. And if you can't test it with a amp meter to find out for sure, it's time to get one. Now they have started selling amp probes that are clamp-on for a much lower price. We picked one up at the shop this week that was a DC and AC clip-on one. I think it was like $42 on Amazon. That's pretty sweet because you just clip it on and it goes all the way down to milliamps and heavier stuff. You can use it for other stuff around the house. You can switch it to AC and use it to see if that heater you got plugged in is drawing too much amp through the circuit. So it's much cheaper than some of those blower motors that could be $200. So
how much?
Could be a couple $100 for some of them. I think this Jeep one's like $65, something like that in most cases. But you just got to price them, see what the current price is. They keep changing.
Chad, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. This all just reminds me how mad I am at you. You talked about the tool bin, the $4.99 tool bin.
Oh, here we go again.
A month and a half ago, and I've been buying all sorts. I went to a store the other day that had 30% off the tool bin.
Russ, you mentioned earlier in the show the name of what town, our new station?
Paso Robles.
I missed it. J-Lore Wineries. My Aunt Jolene is out there. She'll be happy to know there's a station right next door.
That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. Next hour is coming up. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. What's caught your attention in the automotive world?
Well, the Super Bowl has come and gone.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Brady, once again, he's going to run out of fingers.
Yeah.
Some people hate it. I'm kind of indifferent.
I've embraced it now.
It's kind of like, hey, I'm witnessing this.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly how I feel.
That the whole Michael Jordan thing, I was into that. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
With Tom Brady, I'm like, hey, I'm witnessing this. Now, if that was my team and it was my quarterback, I'd be.
I wonder how much of it
jubilant.
is I'm happy, or I've been able to cope with it now because he's a Buccaneer and not a Patriot.
There's something to that.
Now that I know of course it's not, but now that I know it's him and not some sort of kismet that brought all these things together,
we don't know that. We don't know that yet.
No, not at all.
With the Super Bowl behind us, there was a promotion by an auto manufacturer that I just wonder if they got their money's worth out of it, because I want to check and see if it hit any of your two radar.
Okay.
And this is from Automotive News, but Volvo had a promotion that if you had went to their website and spec'd out a car prior to the Super Bowl, and there was a safety scored during the Super Bowl to bring awareness to their safety record, they were giving away cars out of a drawing of 25 people that had pre-registered a car before the Super Bowl. Did you hear anything about this?
Not at all.
Nope.
Me neither.
Huh.
It's an interesting campaign, but I'm reading from the article here though that if a safety is stored, it triggered a vehicle giveaway.
I had not
Pretty
heard
safe
about
bet. When
Yeah.
you're an auto manufacturer, like we're gonna give away a car, and a car to them, it's expensive, but
Sure.
it's probably like a dollar bill in my pocket
Right.
to an auto manufacturer.
You can't just give them away all the time,
But you can do
give
it every
away,
once in a
You
while.
can give away one.
So they pick if there's going to be a safety scored. I don't know. I'm guessing if you're a Volvo enthusiast, you probably did know about this. I've got a sister that's bought Volvos for the last 10 years. She just updated one, as a matter of fact. But I just wonder. I never hit my radar.
That's a good point. You bring up a good point. I'm sure they know they're marketing their target, and I don't. Well, I probably am their target, but they did not reach me. So
They didn't reach me either. If I would have wanted it,
maybe
I gotta tell you, I would have traded it.
Maybe
and
it
done
worked.
something else.
because I think
Sorry.
2 kids and a family. Volvo. Yeah, maybe they got the people they needed to, but no, I had not heard of that at all. That's interesting.
Yeah, and there's $2 million prize value to go along with this.
Oh.
The total prize value.
Wow.
And it's a nod to the 1 million lives saved by the 3-point safety belt that Volvo invented, plus the company's goal of saving 1 million more lives with current and future safety innovations.
And so they're saying they invented the 3-point seatbelt?
That is what their particular one here. I'm just reading the article, Russ, here.
Maybe their particular one. I'm just curious because I have seen Tucker, A Man in His Dream. And
boy.
Chris has got to look that up.
do.
Did Tucker come up with that before they did? So because there's a few items that came out on a Tucker, and a lot of people are going, "What's a Tucker?" Well, look it up. But it's pretty cool. A few items that came out there, but since they never considered them a viable auto manufacturer, even though they had the cars, that was kind of a scandal thing going on. They just said, no, we don't count any of those things that happened there until they were in a full production car. So,
It was us. It was me, the Swedes.
Was it?
Inventor Niels Bohlin in 1920 in Sweden invented the 3-point harness.
Not the Swedish chef from Sesame Street.
There's only been 9. There's only been
I love that
9
guy.
safeties in 54 Super Bowls.
That's a pretty safe giveaway there.
Yeah,
That's a pretty safe bet.
So,
But it was one, and it was a big package.
yeah, I want to go back and make sure I get that right.
If it was $2 million,
yeah, how
I
are
may
they getting
keep
the
the car.
$2 million bucks?
I may just keep the car. you
Maybe
know.
maybe it was
All right,
cash.
they're giving away 25 vehicles. We're giving them a little more credit.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
So they're giving away 25 vehicles to 25 people, drawing 25 people from the people that went to the
gotcha.
website.
Okay.
So-
now it makes more sense.
Yeah, I should have read the whole article.
But I didn't see it. There were so many things when you go back.
Yeah.
If you're a YouTube fan, and you can watch our show on YouTube, of course, that just came out. Been up there a few weeks. I have gone back and I've looked to see what progress is and different things. And as we're gaining subscribers, well, they start playing commercials, right?
Do you go to watch it and see if you need to delete it? I've done that.
Watch and
Go
see
back
what
and
needs to
listen
be
and
changed.
just go, oh, yeah, no, that's okay.
And we've been fine. But as I watch it, they're throwing. There are ads for other stuff. Right now, ours is ad free. But if you're watching some of the other stuff, it's throwing these old Super Bowl ads out. And I'm going, I watched the Super Bowl. How come I didn't see that ad? Or I remember just a part of it, but somebody caught my attention with a plate of corn dogs or something, and I went, oh, what? Yeah, sure. And they were in my face, covering up my vision. But some things were so subtle. Like Shannon said, did you catch the ad plug for some kind of seltzer or something? I don't know. I was like, no, I didn't. So I went back and I watched this video of a singer, and sure enough, there's a guy standing right behind her, and he's got the can in his hand, and he turns it so the label is facing the camera, and he takes a little drink and he makes sure it's facing the camera as he's sitting there. And I totally, that could have said, if you see this can, we'll give the first caller $1 million.
I might have won that because I was on that right away.
By the way,
there was a vodka mule in the background.
Well, you could, if you're a sponsor, you could become a sponsor and name the studio. We could call, but also personally, if someone wants to pay me enough, I would drink their drink or whatever, and just me. You don't have to. The price was right.
Hey,
I would just
sponsors do pay for the show, so thank you very much. But watching that new NASCAR show, The Crew, it's got a lot of real NASCAR people in it. There is a scene in there that I was just rolling because as media, you see this, and we don't have anything here. In fact, I've got a coffee cup that was on the desk a while ago that you'll see had a piece of duct tape on it. Just because I'm like, no, I don't want to sponsor this leaky coffee cup. Well, anyways, I digress there. But the driver's getting interviewed, and they portray him as being completely dumb. But as the person comes up, who is the real, I can't remember the lady's name, but the real interview
pit
person,
reporter,
that comes up to interview him, says, hey, so how was your drive today? And the crew chief, Kevin in the back, is pointing at his shirt, don't forget the hood sponsor, the Big Hoof Barbecue. And he's like, oh, well, it made me hungry. I wanted to go to the barbecue. And then he points at his arm. And he's like, he goes, yeah, and then I'm going to wash it down with Coca-Cola. Yeah, that's it. And then he's pointing over here. And then at the end, he points at something else. And he goes, and then I'm going to, scratch my arm. And he's like, oh, so close.
I could drive a Volvo and wear a Volvo shirt on the YouTube feed. I mean, the price is right. Let's talk to Scott in Virginia. Scott, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you? Oh, I have to answer. Oh, I'm there. Oh, that was not me. Scott, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, Scott.
Hey, I've got a 2011 Honda Odyssey. I bought it used back in 2013 with 30,000 miles on it. All right, it's a Honda, so Well, at 35,000 miles, I had to change the front rotors. All right, well, that was the first time. It has 114,000 miles on it now. Since then, I've changed it 3 additional times. All right. I've tried cross-drilled and flatter ones. I've tried higher end, power stop, all those. And I thought at first maybe it was my wife was driving. I thought, wait, maybe she was riding the brakes. She's harder than I am. Well,
How'd that go over? Did you bring that one up, or did you just keep that one in your mind?
no. I kept that in my mind.
Good idea.
And then and recently, I started driving it. Well, I changed the rotors about a year ago, and then I started driving it. And guess what happened? It's warped again. So it's not her. All right. So so I can't continue blaming it on her. So I need some help because otherwise I'm changing these rotors like right now, and the last one was under 10,000 miles.
You've got something that is causing brake pressure to remain, and if it's been doing it that long, it sounds like it's been there since the vehicle is almost new. So we're going to want to find out what the true cause is here, and I'm going to get myself one of those little infrared heat guns that you can just point. You see them with the COVID on there pointing.
I've got one of those.
There you go.
Yep, I've got one of those.
Get in the vehicle when it's completely cold. Been sitting like an hour.
Okay.
Take off. Drive down the road. Find a place you can go, a direction you can go where you know you don't have to stop, where nobody's going to interfere with you, like early in the morning on a Sunday or something. Just put it in drive. Take your foot off the brake and go. Get it up to the speed of the road you're on, like an old country highway, like at 55. Drive for about 5 minutes, and then just let off the gas, put it in neutral, and coast all the way to a stop. It's going to take you a few minutes, but once you get onto the shoulder and it just rolls all the way and it just stops on its own, then put it up in park the second it's completely stopped. That way you can get an accurate reading. Get out, point it at the front rotors, see what it is. If it says 500 degrees, something's wrong. You go to the back, it's 62, whatever the outside temperature is, probably because it's been sitting parked and you didn't apply the brakes. Go all the way around, and if you find out the front ones are, even if they're elevated compared to the back, if you got 62 on each one in the back and the front ones are at 130, something's going on there, which means we are not releasing the caliper. Then we got to start working backwards. Is it the caliper that's sticking? Is it the hoses that are bad and not releasing pressure, or do we have a problem in the ABS hydraulic control unit, the assembly, or in the master cylinder? One of those going back, I venture to guess, has got to be just not releasing pressure. It's building up a little heat, but not so much that it's dragging on it.
Yeah, wouldn't anything else go bad? Just the rotor then?
Well, warp the rotors because of the excess heat. It will wear the pads a little faster, but they won't be smoking and wearing off unless it's a very aggressive stop.
Are you putting new pads on at the same time every time?
I am, and the pads aren't worn. That's the thing. I don't get any kind of brake smell.
Are the pads glazed over? Does it look like?
They don't look any different than I would normally expect a brake pad to be.
Is there any? Does this vehicle get? Now this is going to go off on a little bit of a wild thought. Does the vehicle get excessively washed at an automated car wash coming right off the road?
No.
Do you drive through a stream every day
at the end
of your drive when it's hot? Do you have to drive through the water to go to your garage?
No.
Right after you coasted off the highway.
So the reason you're bringing that up, though, is if you're driving your car hard and you've got the brakes heated up,
and you
and
were
then
to
go
cool
through,
them down fast by going through some water or something, you can warp your rotors pretty quick.
Something's going on here.
This isn't a common problem around here for us. I don't get a lot of calls about this on the show. We don't get a lot of emails. We really get none. This is to be the first one on the Honda, and they're not coming into our shop with. I've got some customers with 200,000 miles, and I think they may still have original brakes,
at least on the back.
So start with the heat gun and see if it's, because that will just tell you that yes, there is the issue. Then you have to figure it out. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Scott, thanks very much for the call. The phone number to reach us, 866-590-4150.
Make a radio appointment each week to hear the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show, 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us. Let's talk to John, who's listening in Minnesota. John, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Well, I got this 2002 Jeep Grand Cherokee, 4-liter. Real, very, very good rig. Had it forever. The heater on that thing, like last year already, it started doing some weird, goofy things that just wouldn't heat real well or nothing, And this year it's been getting worse. The heater core has been flushed last year, and it was flushed again this year. That you put it on recirc, or whatever, maximum air, then it heats real good. I mean, then the cab gets real warm, but then naturally your windows start fogging up. And when you put it on, like the vent, normal heat cycle type vents, and then it varies. I mean, sometimes it'll blow, kind of decent air out of them, and then it won't, and then it will, and I don't know. What is it? One of those recirculation motors, or is it the main dash thingamajig? What's going on, do you think?
The circulation motors, the doors that move things, are always something to check. I mean, I know Russ has that high on their list of things that they inspect when you start having erratic airflow issues on a HVAC system in a vehicle.
Okay.
But we recently were made aware of some of those middle-aged Chrysler vehicles, and I don't know if this is one of them or not. They had some of the Jeeps, some of the Dodge Durangos, T&A Service and Supply right here out of Sioux Falls. They had given our outside salesman a heater box out of this one was out of a Durango, and they were showing us how they've been replacing a number of the boxes because the foam that was put on the little doors inside of there to make it close soft and not slam and be a complete total seal, the adhesive was releasing and the foam was falling off and it was leaving glue behind, and then the doors would close and they would basically weld themselves shut with the glue, or they'd get stuck and hung up and strip out the motors, and it was causing some problems. So it opened our eyes to some things that could be happening. So there are some different things to consider, but it's still going to take a good physical inspection with a scanner on it just to see if things are doing what they're supposed to be doing from the electronic standpoint, right, Russ?
Right, and if it's working with the recirculation on, you're able to reheat the air, so you're taking warmer air from inside and running through instead of the outside. So it's not going to have to be as efficient. So if the door is closing completely, it's got to be a flow issue, and we have seen just way too many of those vehicles that have had a heater core issue where they needed a replacement heater core. They can be flushed, and that helps a little bit, but they just not enough. They start to build up a little scale inside them, and they lose efficiency. And if it's a cold day, it's just not going to work very good at all. Anything you get too bad, and it'll exponentially start going up. It'll be one day at 0, it's not enough to heat, and then it's 10 degrees, and then it's 20, and then it's 35 and 40 and 50. It's just, there's no heat coming out of there unless you're going down the highway or you have the engine idled up quite a ways and it can flow more, then it can heat more. So if you're finding that you can rev it up a little bit and all of a sudden you start getting heat out of it, if it's sitting there at 1500 RPM and you got good heat, but idle you don't, that's usually an indication that you got a heater core that's starting to get stuffy.
Going down the highway, it doesn't get any warmer, but it just seems like the flow of the air changes, the amount of air coming out of the vents, if you will, will periodically just change.
If it's doing that,
but it's never real warm.
Yeah, like Shannon said, you could have a door issue if it periodically changes or gets goofy like that.
Can I check that motor thingamajig?
Yeah.
Like you take the glove box out or something?
Yeah, so when we check them, if you got a car with a cabin air filter too, that needs to be cleaned.
No, it don't.
And then
it does not.
That's good, because a dirty one will cause those issues, but they work fine on recirculation because it bypasses that. But what we do is we take the motor off for the heater and we switch it from hot to cold by hand, and we should feel it as it gets to one travel or the other. It should go thump, thump as it goes back and forth. And if it doesn't, if it only goes halfway and has a bind, we know we're not getting a good seal, and it could have something broken off inside, a piece of tape or something falling off the door.
Is the Jeep, is that a 4.7 liter?
No, 4 liter.
4 liter? Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, they seem to be 4.7s give us some headaches on
Yeah, no,
interruptions
this
from
one
head
got-
gasket problems and stuff sometimes. So we
This got 230 rounds on it. Has never caused anything. Nothing.
because just to give a quick overview, and then we'll wrap it up. The things that when you have a heating problem, we mentioned the recirculation motors. You got the doors inside the box. You got the heater core. And for people listening that are wondering, if you flush the heater core, you can flush scale and stuff out of it. But if the bottom third of the heater core is plugged, you're just flushing out the top 2/3 that's working. And so your heating capacity has been reduced at that point. So you can flush out a dirty heater core, get the loose stuff out, but still only have a portion of your heater core available. The other things that come into play, of course, is your thermostat, which is going to control your temperature and your flow. But if you ever have a vehicle that is not sealed and you're getting interruptions from the exhaust gases, it can raise heck with the heater system also. But it doesn't sound like that's the case in this one.
John, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. The phone number to reach us, 866-594-4150. Russ and Shannon are here to answer your questions. I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls. And if you like us on Facebook and join the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
You could, like Ron Burnside, who listens to us in Portland, Oregon. Congratulations from all of us here at the Under the Hood Show. And we want to talk about our friends over at UTI, Universal Technical Institute. Also, Universal Technical Institute, they are where you want to go to get the latest training in automotive repair. Everything's changing fast. They've got campuses across the country. They can help you if you've got some GI Bill stuff going on. They've got specialists there to help you with that. Marine mechanics, welding, collision repair, auto repair, NASCAR tech. They've got it all. UTI.edu.
I'm looking at locations right now.
What are you thinking? Which one do you like?
There's a lot I like this week for sure. There's Arizona, you got Phoenix, Long Beach, Sacramento, Orlando. Yeah, I think this is, I don't know if I'm going to be here next week. This isn't, the radio thing, it's okay. I'm not that good at it, so it's not like it's a deal breaker for me or anything. I could switch.
I tell you what, this morning, these last mornings for most people, they're looking for something warmer as soon as they can get it.
Let's talk to Charles. Charles, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I got a 2011 GMC Terrain. I was experiencing an oil consumption issue. Before I tore the car apart and stuff to fix replace the pistons and rings, I had a PO 402, I think it was, something to do with the catalytic converter. So I decided, well, I'll put new cats on it before I put the car back together. Well, now I got the car back together, and I'm experiencing, the first one was a PO 54, which is the number 2 O2 sensor, bank 1. And now we're getting a 132 and a 134 issue. I don't know exactly what. I'm thinking it's a loose wire because I've had those connectors apart several times, and it could be something to do with that. What do you guys think?
I'm going to make a quick assumption that this is a 4-cylinder engine.
Yes, it's the 2.5 or 2.4. I'm sorry. It's a 2.4.
The catalytic converters that you replaced probably were the result of the oil going into them. So you were,
okay.
At that point, you were fixing an effect of a problem that you still have not solved. And so those engines actually have bolt-ons out, extended warranties given by the manufacturer for a problem with the pollution control system. The positive crankcase vent, I said that wrong, but the positive crankcase vent, which is in the valve cover, will plug up and you'll start pulling oil into the combustion part of the engine and burning it. Eventually, it wears on the engine to the point where you do cause problems, but sometimes you can catch it ahead of time. Russ, is he probably too late if it is that problem?
Well, I replaced the rings and the pistons in the engine.
Oh, boy.
Okay, I solved the oil consumption problem because it doesn't use any oil anymore. But now I've got the O2's doing something, and it's trying to stall. I don't know if it's the cold weather or what, but
Okay.
I've pretty much hired it out to a local dealership to try to find what's wrong.
Yeah, it could be that you've got a wiring issue going on, or it might be 4 bad sensors. The other thing it'd be a mass airflow sensor, because if you've got a problem with your mass airflow sensor, it's going to cause a problem with the O2 sensors. They can't read correctly unless they get a good reading off that mass airflow sensor. So that's important.
With who did the rebuild on? Because there is not a lot of people that are rebuilding that engine. They're basically either buying a recycled original equipment motor, an ROE motor, or they're finding a remanufacturer that does those motors. Or...
I bought pistons and rings from the local dealership, the Chevy dealership, and did it myself.
Good for you. That's a high-end hoodie there. It's not everybody's doing that.
And she run really good at first, but now when the cold weather came on, she's just experienced it dying. When you first start it up, it's cold, it wants to die. It'll die, and then she starts it back up until when it gets really warmed up, it's fine after it gets really warmed up, the car.
That could be something going on with the mass airflow sensor too, where it's throwing readings on those oxygen sensors like that for the problem. But it's not, like we said, you get a code for an oxygen sensor. Don't just assume it's that, because it may be something upstream causing this to go on.
Correct.
It'd be nice if we could give you the exact answer, but it's going to take some equipment. And anytime an engine has been out, because I'm assuming you took it out of chassis and did your work, correct?
Oh yeah, I had it completely out, tore it all the way out of there.
So you've got a lot of things that have been affected. You've had the wiring disconnected. You've had the ground wires disconnected. You have the opportunity to pinch something when you're putting it back together. So that is definitely something to inspect. Any wire that you routed that maybe didn't get tied away with the original tie-offs, and now it's gotten up against a hot surface and affected a wire. These are all things that we've experienced over the years. Our team has replaced at Russ's shop thousands of engines over the years. And with different technicians and different things that have happened, we've run into a little bit of everything. And so wiring is definitely something to consider.
Charles, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. Digging into that a little bit is going to take some doing, isn't it? Because you just got to check every connection.
All I heard as he was talking was thousands of dollars. Good thing he was able to do that himself. Maybe he buys the piston ring kit. What do you think, Russ? Did he buy that for $500, $400?
Probably somewhere in there, but I've heard of people doing this to make the repairs, even some dealerships that have been pulling these things apart and doing some repairs. A guy got a quote, called us the other day and said, hey, they want to put pistons and rings in my car, and they want like $3,200 to do it. And we're like, okay, I can get you a whole engine with a complete warranty for $3,300. With a year of parts and labor, it's up to you, whatever you want to do. And he's like, well, yeah, that sounds better, because they were going to put the pistons and rings in, which may have fixed the problem or may not have. We don't know. But what if you have another problem in the engine, it's not covered.
But if you do have an Equinox or a Terrain in that, there's other vehicles that use that 2.4 in that range of yours, please, if you haven't had the work done on that positive crankcase vent to inspect that to make sure it's working correctly, it may require a valve cover replacement. But do not wait on that, because that can cause you some bigger issues down the road.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Wayne. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Wayne, what can we do for you?
Well, I'm wondering about proper coolant temperature in a 92 Chevy Blazer, a 350 engine.
What's it running at now?
Oh, about 150.
Too low. So that it's going to be, depending on what they put in there for a thermostat, if they put a non-factory type, a low one, they could have got something as low as like a 165, and your gauge could be off a bit, so it might be running a 165 thermostat. 192 is going to be closer to what the factory had. Most of them were at 192, which if your gauge is off a little bit, it's going to be somewhere between 185 and 195 typically on that gauge. You don't want it really any hotter than that. The thermostat only controls the minimum temperature. Once it opens, it can still get much hotter than that. But if you're sitting idle and you don't have the heater on inside and your temp goes up to, let's say, 200 and just sits there after you've let it idle a half hour to an hour, and then you go down the road and it drops down quick, then your thermostat is definitely not closing and it's allowing it to cool down.
Okay.
Does it warm up
Well,
when
you
it
see,
sits for a while?
Well, yeah, but it doesn't warm up as quickly as my newer vehicle.
Okay, well,
You know, that this 08 that I've got, that will start blowing heat in a mile or two.
Right.
But now this 92, it seems to be running the way I remember the older 350s back in the 60s and 70s. You know,
Oh, yeah.
they never ran with that needle up there near the 200 or 210 mark.
No, and the older ones though, I've had a few of them. I still got some around that still run that 195. But we have a partner called Motorrad who makes thermostats, and something we've learned from them is about the ability of a thermostat to warm up quicker. So some thermostats, when you start approaching their temperature where they're supposed to be, they open up really quick. So you don't have a good control. You'll get the hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold as it's warming up. Their thermostats tend to be a little more controlled, so they keep the thermostat like 100% closed until it gets close to that operating temp. So if it's a 192, it's going to get very close to that temp before it starts to open, but it's not going to allow it to get way too hot. It's going to open quickly once it gets to that point, but it's going to keep that flow controlled a little better. Because as thermostats go, they wear. A lot of people call them in different countries, they call them heat motors. Which,
that threw me for a loop the first time I heard it.
I was like, what's a heat motor? Well, it's because it's controlling the temp. Well, it's a spring, and it only has so many open and close cycles to it, and they're designed to wear out. So change that up, and I'm sure our partners at Motorrad would be happy if you picked up one of those and gave it a shot.
Wayne, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. And when we get cold temperatures, if you are aware of your temp, if you're watching your temp, say over a period of time, and then a different season sets in, it can kind of play games with you if you've been watching it because it does different things in different temperatures.
Yeah, and one thing to avoid, I know, Chris, you asked me, my friend's got a truck or something, and it's just really cold, and somebody told him, his buddy says, well, just throw a piece of cardboard in front of the radiator.
I was going to ask you about that.
Thermostats control the minimum amount of heat in the vehicle. If a thermostat is 100% closed, and keeping the coolant in the engine.
It's basically a roadblock to stop the coolant from leaving the engine until it's heated up.
It doesn't matter if you take the radiator out, cross the lines over together, and throw the radiator away and put a brick wall up there. It's not going to get any warmer. Does that make sense? Because the coolant isn't in the radiator. You're not trying to keep that warm. It's staying in the block. But here's what happens. The engine oil cooler, the transmission oil cooler, the power steering cooler that are all up there that are relying on that airflow, you can block that off. And I've seen people come in and say, well, my car never overheated. Why is the transmission burnt up? Well, because you blocked off the airflow to the cooler.
That was actually a friend of mine on Facebook said her car just isn't getting warm when it gets cold. And a lot of people were like, well, we used to just throw cardboard in front of the grill. And don't do that.
No. Because a lot of cars now have coolers that did not have coolers back in those days. But you ask a northern Minnesotan how to keep your car warm, I'd trust the advice of some of them because it gets mighty cold up there around the northern lakes.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. The phone number to reach us, 866-594-4150. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturtevant.
Prepare to learn something. You're going under the hood.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. The phone number to reach us, 866-594-4150. Going back to Charles' question about removing the engine, this question is open to both of you. What is the smallest mistake that you've seen that has caused the biggest problem? Because we were talking about, he was taking the engine out, and sometimes you said you can pinch a wire or
these guys probably talk, but from our customers that buy things from us, and then we eventually figure out what was wrong, one of the more common is wiring. A plug-in that wasn't quite snapped together underneath a fuse block or on a wiring harness. And so when you inspect it and they look at everything looks good. And after about the 5th time of looking at it, then somebody actually starts taking stuff apart and clicking it back together again on every connection. And all of a sudden, the problem went away. And you don't even know what you fixed.
Right.
Isn't that probably the worst?
Oh, that's a big one. Other ones that can cause tragic failures are things like oil cooler lines that have these cheap plastic clips that are usually less than $2 to hold them in. And you've really got to make sure you work them and get them all the way in, and they click and they're snapped in, and then you pull to make sure they don't pop out, and then you bolt the bracket that holds them to the block or whatever so they don't come out. Well, if you just stick them in there and then say, oh, they're good, and then bolt the bracket on, this little $2 fastener can cost you an engine when they blow out going on the road. And it might come out in 2 minutes. It might come out in 2 years. Like, well, it lasted 2 years. It wasn't our problem. Well, why is it not clicked in? Because usually when they come out like that, we grab a hold of it. When we've seen them come in and an engine's burned up for that reason, it's been, somebody put it in themselves or another shop. You go, oh, look, your oil cooler line's not in there, and we push on it and it goes click and snaps in and we can't pull it out. Well, I don't care if it's been in there 2 years. It was never installed all the way. So those tiny little things can cause an issue. That's the man-made issue. The other issue would be a failure of a part, a failure of a thermostat. A lot of thermostats, when they fail in the open position. If they break, they're going to open up wide open and they're going to cool down the engine. Some companies, when they fail closed. When they spring brakes, they're shut, and guess what? You overheat the engine. Most of the old thermostats used to do that. My car's overheating. Your thermostat's out. Oh, why didn't they just design them the other way? So when the thermostat failed,
it just wouldn't heat.
Wouldn't heat.
Probably some of the other mistakes that we see,
What about personally?
I've had all these. Not
How about contamination in a system?
Yeah, we've had to pay for most all of these kinds of mistakes.
Russ quickly went to system-wide mistakes.
Yeah.
I want to know if there's ever you put an engine in and this piece.
The red cap plugs that are used to stop oil leakage in a unit that has been, especially on a recycled original equipment, an ROE part where they've put plugs in it, the plug doesn't get removed, the line gets put right over it,
or there's two. They'll stuff one down in the hole, and then they'll put a cap over the outside. So you take the outside cap off and don't realize that they.
So always make sure and check all the orifices to make sure they're wide open. The other thing is failure to switch things. Where one vehicle, if it was here again, I'm talking about using a different engine from another vehicle. One engine had, let's say, a system that used gauges, and the other one used just lights.
Right.
The sensors are different. They don't switch the sensors, gets bad readings, throwing codes, can't figure it out. They're getting weird temperature readings because one had gauges they were putting into. Typically, it's the result of not switching enough parts that causes the most problems.
I gotcha.
If you start with a brand new engine, you have to switch everything over. But if you start with another engine from a different vehicle, recycled original equipment, that's where you have to watch for those things, is switching the parts. You can have one wiring harness that looks identical, but it doesn't have the same pin out as the other one. And you don't switch it, and you suddenly don't have the conductors going to all the components. Those are the type of things that can really drive you crazy because they say it doesn't work.
And we've talked about just when someone they'll buy a donor vehicle or a donor engine, and it is one minor thing, same car, same everything, but there is one tiny little difference that makes them not compatible.
Exactly right.
How about when you're trying to make that shot in the garbage can across the room? You do that, Chris? And you go
all the time.
Score, and you're like, man, I couldn't do that if I tried it a million more times. How about the guy who doesn't have the engine covered up? The intake is not covered on the engine. Throttle body's open up, intake is open, and you got a hole about the size of a apple, maybe smaller. And the guy's over on the bench.
In some cases, a grapefruit.
The guy's over on the bench, and he's trying to put a snap ring on a U-joint in the vise, which is 15 feet away. And he's prying on it, and it goes ping and disappears. You go, where'd it go? I can't find it. I look all over, can't find it. So we have to open up another one and get a snap ring out and put it together, and it's done. And then for some reason, they happen to shine the light down this intake, and they realize that snap ring has flown across the shop and made a perfect basket into that intake, and it would have destroyed that engine if they hadn't looked in there for some reason. Now, this does happen more than you think when that intake's uncovered and somebody's putting clips on and things under the hood.
Yeah.
They can just go boop and go in there, and it's like the little game where you flip the, hungry hippo or whatever.
Monkeys.
It was.
Or ants in the pants.
There you go. Yeah, it's the same thing. They right there but those things happen.
Could you make the ants jump?
Yeah.
On your first try.
Yeah. I don't know.
It took a little bit so you could flick them. Good.
You got to find a good.
Yeah, because some had weak legs.
Yeah, you got to,
and they wouldn't jump.
New ants flick better than old ants. That's for sure.
Those games and those sayings and the things that have just gotten lost over time. Yesterday, I told one of our techs, I said, I bet you dollars to donuts that, and he goes, what's donuts have to do with anything? I want dollars.
Just
what?
a saying.
He's like, I never heard of it.
We talked just recently about Super Bowl commercials and having the Super Bowl behind us, but there was a segment of the population that probably watched was it DoorDash Sesame Street themed commercial?
Yeah.
And probably just smiled and thought, this is pretty cool. And there was another group of the population that said, what in the heck is this?
I heard an interesting story about Sesame Street the other day. And they said that we are now at a point in history where probably every living person has some affiliation with Sesame Street. Either their kids were around, because it's been over 50 years now.
Yep.
So they were saying that just about everyone in America has some sort of knowledge of Sesame Street.
I enjoyed that commercial.
Mm-hmm.
It just made me smile because it reminded me of so many things growing up. It was really cool.
I did see a quiz the other day. It was pretty interesting. It listed all of the Super Bowl commercials that they ran in the game. And there were two boxes, two questions for you. One, do you remember this commercial? And two, do you know what the commercial was for? So it would just give you
I want to play that game.
I
want to play that game.
That's a hard one. What is the commercial?
Yeah, it was impossible. I mean, as someone who pays attention, I got maybe 5 or 6 of them because I remembered the ad.
I remember they had that McConaughey commercial, and all I could the first thing I thought of was he's speaking in this one. He's not just kicked back in the Lincoln. But I don't remember what it was for. He was flat through the whole thing, but it was some kind of
that's
food
when I
thing.
remembered.
That was Doritos.
Was it?
3D Doritos.
3D Doritos. He was flat, and he got livened up when he went inside the machine to steal one.
Said, man, he looks so old. And you know what? My wife looked at me and went,
the same age. Same age.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. So getting back to the issue with the smalls thing, can you think of the smallest mistake you've made that created a big...
It's what Russ just mentioned. It's dropping a small piece into a piece you cannot get it out of.
Not flushing the AC system before you put the brand new
It's a
compressor
small
on.
piece dropped because I was being careless and didn't cover something up, and then it's like, son of a... and you got to take something completely apart. And it would have been... You would have been done in 2 hours, but instead it becomes 2 days.
Put the whole small block Chevy together, and you go, what's this? Buddy, that's an oil pump drive shaft. It goes between the oil pump and the distributor, and it goes on before the oil pump. Well, how do you get it in there? You take the engine back out, remove the oil pan, and take the pump off and put it in there. Well,
is there another way?
No.
Do I have to do it
Not
that
on
way?
this one. I mean, different ones, different ways. But
to answer your question about throwing something in the garbage, I know, Shannon, you're like me. I always think I can make that shot.
Yeah.
I could throw it. I could bank it off 50 things, and if it went in, I'd be like, yeah, I knew that would happen. I always think I can make that shot or that one basket if that ever comes up. And I actually had to do that before too. At my son's game, they were warming up in the gym, and I walked through, and somebody threw me a basketball, and I hit about a 29'3".
Really?
Right from the corner, yeah.
Yeah.
Drained it and walked out to Cheers, and I couldn't make that.
So
1
you
out of
did
10.
you just walked away.
Drained it, walked away. Actually started walking away, but I did know it was going in when I shot it, and I walked away without even waiting, and it was...
Didn't Obama do that recently when he was
Yeah,
he was
did.
walking through a gym somewhere,
Yeah.
political season, and they threw him a ball and he nailed it and he
Dropped it in.
dropped it in and walked right out.
That's what I do, he said. That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. If you are watching the YouTube feed, we're still going to go. We got a couple calls coming in, so let's start and talk to Don. Don, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you? Oh, I got to turn him on. Hold on. Now I'm thrown off here. This is how it works. If you want to give us a call, 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Don. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Don, what can we do for you?
As a kid growing up in Del Rapids, my dad and I were always wrenching on some kind of car. And in regards to you guys throwing stuff or a snap ring flying across the room, anytime we'd lose a snap ring or something of that nature, my dad always said, we're Christians, we're not swearing, but he says, oh, it's a Jesus clip. I said, Jesus clip? And he goes, yeah, oh, Jesus, where'd that go now?
Yeah, I've heard that term used before, too. That will pretty much sum up the feeling when you can't find out where it went. That is for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, go ahead.
We're building a 429 right now for my son's 70 Mustang, and that exact scenario about that hex pump drive, we had to do that, but we were able to put it down in through the top and then put the distributor on it.
Some you can, and that's always nice. I've seen so many weird things like that. I had a buddy with an Oldsmobile engine, and it had it's got an oil galley plug, which is behind the timing chain upper gear. They fired it up after they got this thing going. They primed it and everything. Couldn't figure out why the oil pressure was low, and it turned out the plug was out. Well, we didn't want to take out, it's a front distributor, and we didn't want to take out the timing chain and all that stuff. So we thought, can we get one in there? So we finagled a way to put it on the end of a piece of rubber hose and got it down in there through the hole in the timing gear, and then twisted it with this hose until we got it in all the way. And then it was, put it in there, turn it with your finger, and we got it far enough, and then we cut off the end of a hex key.
Oh my goodness.
And turned it. We could move it about a quarter of an inch at a time, and we ended up with like 3 different hex keys cut different ways where we could turn it. And I bet we spent 6 hours.
You could have taken it apart.
We could have taken it apart. But we finally got it in there. We didn't have to take the front apart, but we got it in there. Oh, yeah, we got it tight. It worked. The car was good.
My dad just got some quarter-inch copper tubing, too, and we just lightly tapped it down onto that shaft, and we connected it good enough. We pulled it up out of there.
That's good. That's good thinking.
Uh-huh. Well, there you go. Don, thanks very much for the call.
You bet.
Talk to you later. All right, we're going to end our YouTube video. Before we do that, we are going to start working on the stuff for our podcast, which, by the way, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us on Facebook. We'd love to have you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. But let's, who are our podcast sponsors, which we're going to go do right now?
BerkeleyClassics.com, your key to collector car insurance.
And by Car-Part. 200 million parts. You can get them to your door fast. Car-Part.com.
And Road Ready Wheels, OEM replica wheels at a lot less price. Huge cost savings. RoadReadyWheels.com. Use the code HOODIE to save even more cash.
All right, there we go. That is the end of our broadcast for today.
Are we a little more casual now or not? Or
I don't know. Do you feel more casual?
Well, we're not under the complete burden of all those other signals, so this is a little more free flowing.
Mm-hmm.
If you are watching right now on the YouTube,
It's not the YouTube, it's YouTube. Just a U and no a tube.
But please do tell your friends, share this. We want to build this up. We're working on everything. The studio here has turned out amazing. Russ has literally poured blood, sweat, and tears into this. and we're excited to grow this piece of the show. But like you said, it's a piece of the show.
Mm-hmm.
The podcast has been there for a while. It's growing. The terrestrial radio continues to grow.
240 stations there and 50,000 people on podcast every week.
So if you happen to look at this and you see the new YouTube channel, you're like, oh, they don't have a lot of views yet. We need to get that rolling. We got a lot of subscribers, but check out all of our other stuff. We're new to the video piece.
Or you turn on the YouTube channel and go, ugh. That's not what I pictured.
My daughter came up here for the end of the show. She's sitting here in Madison, and she's back from college in Phoenix, and she said she was going to ask us questions, but now she's wimped out.
How was that, by the way, coming here this week from Phoenix, coming with the 20 below?
You can talk.
She could be live and talking to her friends over here, and they could watch her being.
You want to get on the mic?
She could just stand back over there.
Do you want to kill your dad right now? Yeah.
Or
all right, there you go. Hey, thanks very much for watching, though. We